The preliminary report issued by the committee in charge of investigating al-Houla massacre affirmed that all the victims of the massacre were from peaceful families, pointing out that the victims were killed by weapons from short distances and by sharp instruments and not through bombardment. In a press conference held at the Foreign Ministry, head of the committee, Brigadier Qasim Jamal Suleiman, said that the terrorist groups stationed in al-Houla killed the victims during the attack launched against the law enforcement forces, which did not enter the area. He pointed out that a number of dead bodies found in the area were for terrorists killed during the clashes with the law enforcement forces. Suleiman went on to say that the investigation committee depended on testimonies of eyewitnesses, referring that some of these testimonies would be released to the mass media. He stressed that there were 5 positions for law enforcement forces around al-Houla, and the aim of the armed attack was to change the region into an outlawed area. Suleiman said that about 600 to 800 gunmen gathered in the village coming from nearby areas and used heavy weapons including mortar bombs, machine guns and missiles. He concluded that the main objective of the massacre was to target the relatives of member of the People's Assembly, Abdul Mu'ti Mishlib, but the massacre expanded to include other families. The spokesman of the Foreign and Expatriates Ministry, Dr. Jihad Makdissi, said that when the investigation is completed, its results will be presented to the international community. He added that the Syrian government was the first to inform General Robert Mudd to go to the place of the massacre. Makdissi said that by committing heinous massacres, the terrorists aimed to create sedition among the Syrian people. He pointed out that it was very strange that at the time Annan was visiting Syria, Washington and its allies were expelling Syrian ambassadors, referring that it is regrettable that the UN Secretary General changes his job from preserving international peace and security to talking about civil wars. Makdissi concluded that the Syrian government is contacting the UN observers daily, stressing Syria's commitment to Annan's plan, but the regional parties and the opposition do not want to implement their commitments towards this plan. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates sent a letter to the Human Rights Council on using mercenaries as a means for violating human rights and obstructing people's right to self-determination. In its letter, the ministry expressed concern over the bids of some countries that use mercenaries to abort the efforts of developing countries in combating this phenomenon. The letter condemned the double standards policies of some countries in approaching human rights. Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said Russia does not consider changing its stand on the crisis in Syria. He added that any attempts to exercise pressure on Moscow in this respect would not be appropriate. Peskov affirmed that Russia's foreign policy in general and towards the Syrian issue in particular is transparent and balanced, and it would be logical not to expect a change in Moscow's policy in connection with Syria during the visits to be paid by the Russian president to Germany and France on Friday. The UN observers visited Douma and Nahar Aisha in Damascus countryside and met the citizens. Another team of observers also visited the city of Daraa. In Aleppo, the observers visited Aleppo Hospital and were briefed on the heinous crimes committed by the armed terrorist groups. Security forces foiled an infiltration attempt by a terrorist group from the Lebanese territories to Tel Kalakh area. A number of terrorists were wounded near the village of Jabaq in Tel Kalakh countryside, while others fled to the Lebanese territories. 250 people who were involved in the events taking place in Syria but did not commit crimes were released from the police command in Damascus. Earlier, 500 persons with a similar situation were also released. On May 16th, the authorities set free 250 detainees whose hands are clean of Syrian blood, in addition to 265 detainees who were released on May 5th. On April 21st, 30 persons involved in the events were set free, preceded by 552 detainees who were also released on January 5th. A number of new parties and civil organizations working in Syria announced the formation of a new coalition called the Parties and Forces of National and Democratic Blocs. Head of the Solidarity Party, Imad al-Din al-Khatib, said that the new coalition constitutes a political framework that works for establishing a democratic state, pointing out that the new coalition would work to find a political solution for the Syrian crisis.